You don't have friends, and deep inside, you've known it for a long time. Not because you're unlovable, not because you're broken, but because something in you started waking up before everyone else. Carl Jung once said, loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. This is the silence you've felt your whole life. Not a lack of voices, but a lack of resonance. You tried. You did. You sat with them. You shared laughter, memories, even secrets. But something in your chest always whispered, this isn't real. They don't really see you. They only see what you reflect back to them. And that reflection, it kept shrinking. Because as you grew, they couldn't follow. Your thoughts became deeper. Your presence became heavier. Your standards became sharper. And one by one they began to fade. Not all at once, but slowly. The messages stopped. The invitations dried up. The check-ins became rare. You looked around and realized you were alone. But here's the thing, no one tells you. You don't lose people when you become worse. You lose them when you become more real. And being real is terrifying to those who've built their lives on masks. You learned to see through things. Conversations, intentions, performances. People say they want authenticity, but when it stares back at them with unfiltered eyes, they flinch. And suddenly, you're too much, too intense, too quiet, too deep. They'll say they don't understand you, but what they really mean is, you make them feel seen in ways they weren't ready for. You became a mirror, and not everyone wants to see their reflection. Carl Jung taught that the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires separating from the collective. He cannot awaken while clinging to comfort. He cannot evolve while being liked by everyone. That ache you feel, that silence, that space where friends used to be, that's not failure. It's initiation. You're not where they left you. You're further, higher, deeper. You started asking questions they were too scared to face. You started healing wounds they ignored. You started choosing truth over approval. And when you did, the crowd disappeared. This isn't loneliness. It's clarity, because you're no longer available for shallow connections. You can't fake laugh. You can't do small talk for hours. You can't tolerate people who only reach out when they need something. You can't sit at tables where gossip replaces honesty and validation replaces truth. You crave presence, realness, vulnerability, people who don't need to perform around you, people who breathe in your silence and feel safe, not awkward, people who listen to understand, not to reply. And those people, they're rare, not because they don't exist, but because they're hidden, waiting, like you, for something real. So the space you feel right now, the empty room in your heart, it's not a punishment, it's preparation. The universe isn't depriving you, it's detoxing you, cleansing your life of noise, so that when the real connections come, there's room for them to grow. Carl Jung also spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we suppress, deny, or ignore. Sometimes, the people we called friends were never really friends. They were distractions from facing ourselves. They mirrored back a version of us we thought we needed to be. Likeable, agreeable, tame. But you're not that anymore. You've stepped into your shadow. You've faced your silence. You've stopped pretending. And now, your soul demands something else. You don't have friends, not because you're unworthy, but because you've become aware. You stopped betraying yourself just to belong. You stopped chasing people who never stayed. You stopped lowering your energy to feel included. That kind of self-respect, it's magnetic, and it's isolating. Most people aren't used to it. They'll test it, push against it, try to pull you back into old versions of yourself. But the deeper you go, the less you tolerate the shallow. You don't crave being liked anymore. You crave being real. You'd rather sit alone in truth than surrounded by pretense. You'd rather be misunderstood in authenticity than loved for a mask. And that's where your power begins. Not in the crowd, not in being the most popular, but in being the most you. Unapologetic ally, uncompromisingly unshakably. So when you look around and don't see friends, remember this: your soul has stopped seeking quantity. Now, it seeks quality, depth, alignment, energy that doesn't drain, but heals. And those kinds of friendships, they don't come often, but when they do, they change everything. You don't need 10 people. You need one who sees you, one who listens between your words, one who doesn't flinch at your silence, one who honors your energy even when you're not performing. Until then, walk your path alone with pride, Because the loneliness you feel now is nothing compared to the emptiness of pretending to belong. Jung warned us, the greatest burden of the self is to carry its own truth in a world that prefers lies. You are carrying that truth, and for now, it's heavy, but soon it will lead you to people who carry theirs too. People who speak your language, who see you without needing explanation, who recognize your evolution because they've lived it too. That's not friendship, that's soul recognition. End. It's worth the wait. You don't have friends, and that used to hurt. Now, it makes sense. If you're waking up to your patterns, the Jung method can help. Links in the first comment. Now listen. You stopped chasing people. You stopped needing explanations. You stopped explaining yourself to people who only wanted the version of you they could understand. And the more you let go of them, the more you met yourself. There's this quiet shift that happens when you stop begging for space in the lives of others. At first it feels like abandonment. Later, you realize it was alignment. You used to think that friendship meant consistency. Laughter, birthdays remembered, late night calls, warm group photos. But now you know, friendship is something else entirely. Friendship is presence, not performance. Friendship is feeling safe in your silence. Friendship is someone asking how you are and actually listening, not waiting for their turn to speak, not shifting the topic back to themselves. The kind of people you used to call friends weren't really friends. They were people who liked the version of you that didn't scare them, the agreeable one, the one who stayed in the role they were used to, the one who didn't say too much, the one who didn't shine too bright. You started asking deeper questions. You stopped laughing at things that weren't funny. You didn't respond immediately to texts. You didn't show up every time they needed validation. And for that, you were labeled distant, different, selfish. But you weren't changing. You were remembering who you are. Carl Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he forgot to mention how lonely that privilege can feel. Because when you start becoming who you truly are, the world you once knew begins to crumble. The masks fall. The conversations dry up. The invitations stop coming. The air gets quiet. That's the space where real transformation happens. You stopped being easy to consume. You stopped being emotionally available for chaos. You stopped saying yes when your body said no. You learned to sit with your own silence. You discovered the difference between people who check on you and people who check on your energy. Between people who want to be around you and people who want something from you. And suddenly, the room that used to be full feels empty. But look closer. It's not empty. It's clear. Clear of noise. Clear of false attachments. Clear of the versions of you that needed permission to be loved. Now, you don't wait for the phone to ring. You don't panic when you spend Friday night alone. You don't scroll through old messages, trying to figure out what went wrong. Because nothing went wrong. You went right. You grew. You healed. You expanded. And with that expansion came the shedding of identities that no longer fit, of people who could no longer meet you where you are. Some people aren't meant to stay, not because they're bad, not because you're better, but because your path requires solitude, because your next chapter needs stillness. The people you need now can only find you when you stop pretending to be the version they were used to. You don't want many. You want rare souls, rare honesty, rare energy. People who hear your silence louder than your words. People who see your absence and send love anyway. People who don't get offended when you protect your peace. You stopped craving attention. You started craving depth. That's why the crowd disappeared. Because depth scares the shallow. You walk into rooms now and feel everything. You notice energy before words. You sense tension behind smiles. You hear the unsaid. You feel the masks slipping before they speak. And that gift, it can be isolating, but it's also your compass. It tells you where to stay. It warns you where to leave. It whispers when something isn't aligned. Most people numb that voice. You chose to listen. You no longer try to fit into spaces that cost you your self-respect. You no longer shrink to make others feel comfortable. You no longer perform. You're no longer impressed by popularity. You're moved by presence, by realness, by vulnerability, and that makes you rare. So rare, in fact, that many won't know how to hold you. They'll admire you from a distance. They'll be drawn to your light, but afraid of your depth. Let them. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be true to yourself. You'd rather walk alone than with a crowd that moves in the wrong direction. And that right there is why you don't have friends. Because you're not available for half-truths. conditional love, or performative closeness. You've seen what lies behind the curtain. You've heard the silence between the words. You've tasted the freedom of solitude, and you're not going back. You're not hard to love. You just love honestly, and honesty makes people uncomfortable. You'd rather have no one than pretend with everyone. You've become the kind of person who doesn't reach for people out of loneliness. You reach for yourself. You've learned that the most sacred connection is the one you build within, and when others arrive who match that frequency, they'll stay. You won't have to chase them. You won't have to explain yourself. They'll just feel it, and you'll know. Until then, don't look back. Don't measure your worth by how full your contact list is. Don't judge your progress by how many people sit at your table. The ones who left created space for those who are coming. Keep choosing yourself in rooms that demand you abandon who you are. Keep protecting your peace in conversations that drain your spirit. Keep showing up for yourself, even when no one else does, because this path, as lonely as it may seem, is the path of awakening. It's not a punishment. It's a preparation. One day, the people who speak your language will hear your voice. One day, the hearts that beat like yours will find your rhythm. And when that day comes, you'll look back and realize you were never friendless. You were just clearing space for the real ones, the ones who don't run when things get deep, the ones who sit with your silence, the ones who love you without needing to understand every part of you. Until then, you walk alone, not because you have to, but because you finally can.